Hey guys, how's it going?
Good. How you doing, Jason?
Great, John. I want you to meet John Gordon. This is a good friend of mine for many years now. We met in the hostel in the forest, treehouse hostel, 150 acres in Georgia. And since then, we've just like kept in touch and observed the world. And John's one of my favorite people to talk to. When I feel like everything is crazy, he's one of the most like level-headed people I know. He doesn't get pulled into any of these traps. And he's like, kind of like us. He's traveling, researching, trying to find, you know, conscious ways of living. So he's been all over. He's also a musician and he's an entrepreneur. He has a finance background, and yeah, he's a lot. So I want to start by asking the first question, John. What is your idea of living a blissful life, like an ideal life for you?
Great question. Um, I would say uh, presence is really the is the secret sauce. I've had a bunch of different wild esoteric experiences, and you know these whether it's plant medicine or meditation, yoga, breath work, etc. Um, it it really teaches you and brings you back to presence and just pure experience. And so I don't like my cliche answer, but that is what it comes down to. And it really, there's a lot of ways to get there, but um, there's something about using the analogy of a camera lens, opening the aperture to be able to uh, take in everything at the same resonance, at the same clarity. And so, some of the most memorable or life-changing experiences are ones where I was completely present in the moment, and it's almost like looking at a painting where the foreground and the background are one, and the peripheral vision is kind of infinite. um and also in these plant medicine experiences or meditation retreats, um these experiences of unity consciousness, of kind of a God's eye view of everything all at once. So there's a lot of different names for that. We can talk about the flow state, um, but yeah, just really being able to tap into really the magic of everyday moments that's unfolding.
Perfect.
It's a beautiful, poetic answer. Absolutely, man. Thank you. So what would you say your advice now in this post AI apocalypse? What's your advice for like people achieving that bliss?
Well, I feel like I've arrived at a worldview that has kind of been informed by kind of the Buddhist path, which at some point I'd like to get into the origin story of how Jason and I met, but the kind of discerning Buddhist framework of looking at the world, looking at our interrelationship with everything, and our attachments and our traps and all of that, with kind of the shamanic path, which is an experiential one. And so, again, a lot of different frameworks for looking at this, but you could say it's the esoteric path and the exoteric path. It's kind of the doctrine or the masculine framework for looking at things, with the feminine gnosis or direct experience of life, and then integrating those two. So that's, I'm realizing I didn't remember your initial question.
Well, no, again, so glad you said that. But is there anything like maybe a little bit practical that people can do to achieve that for someone who's listening who might not have done any of these, have these experiences that you've had?
Yeah. So for me, I guess I can get into a little bit of when that path started, because it was right before we met at the hostel in the forest. And the catalyst for me was, kind of a dark night of the soul experience, where everything kind of crumbled. Had to wind down a business, wind down a romantic relationship, and then I was pushing myself to train for an Ironman, and I injured myself in that process. I pulled my hamstring. So my ego was tied up in a business, then it was tied up in a relationship, then it was tied up in my physical ability, and all of that crumbled. And the Ironman was in Costa Rica. And so I decided I'm just going to go to Costa Rica and heal and relax. And that led me to an ayahuasca ceremony. And so I want to start by saying ayahuasca is not for everyone. There's a lot of people that like to make it a panacea, but everyone has their own potential ayahuasca. And so I see that as a catalyst for a path forward. And so, again, a kind of an opening of the aperture, opening of direct experience, and also a catalyst for all of your convictions to become loosely held, and the ability to kind of re-underwrite, relitigate those worldviews. And so for me, and the catalyst was ayahuasca, but it could be breath work, it could be yoga, it could be meditation. So shortly after that experience, I had a meditation teacher, David Nichtern, whose teacher was Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who was, controversial figure, but he was he was really kind of the Buddhist Ram Dass, if you will, of the 60s, that brought the teachings of Buddhism to the West in a big way. And so in this teacher training, one of the first books that we read was Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. And so this book talks about how we like to materialize everything in the West. Meaning if we learn some piece of information, we like to internalize it, integrate it, and then treat it as spiritual capital to make our ego better, right? And so we talked about all the traps of spiritual materialism, collecting malas and Buddha statues, and speaking in a weird way, all of the new age stuff that we see today. But it also talks about what part of us is actually speaking or seeking a spiritual experience or spiritual growth. And it is the ego too. So it's all kind of spiritual materialism. But the book was very helpful for integrating that kind of crazy disruptive catalysts, and to kind of begin to build a scaffolding, a more masculine kind of structure around a very ecstatic feminine kind of experience like ayahuasca, or substitute that with a meditation retreat or breath work, etc. So my my path is kind of evolved to kind of integrate the middle way of where can we achieve these ecstatic states in life, and using a discerning framework for not getting swept out to sea in that process. And so when Jason and I met, I was fresh out of that experience. This is right before the pandemic. I want to say, my first ceremony was June of 2019, and we probably met in the fall, I guess, of 2019, just right before the pandemic, right before the world changed. And so I was both fresh on that kind of ecstatic disruption, and kind of I was also in a state of bliss, but also a state of confusion. And so I met Jason, and I'm like, it felt like perfect timing to meet someone that had, that much learned wisdom in Buddhism, but also kind of a trickster. And, it was just a really interesting character to meet at that time. And so I felt like that accelerated my leaning into Buddhism. And so, yeah, why don't I take a pause there? Because that
was awesome. No, that was a great answer. And I would just want to point out that what started it all, though, after that crash, was you decided to go to Costa Rica anyway. So that was a really good decision you made to, like, I'm going there, and that was awesome. So I just wanted to say, like, that kind of started all of that experience.
Yeah, and to add to that, I had watched a documentary on Vice one time about ayahuasca and plant medicine, and it was, it was one of these serendipities that kind of gives me chills, because, and I don't think the algorithms were that good back in 2019, but so I watched this thing on YouTube on Vice, and then in my Instagram feed was an ayahuasca ceremony on the exact days that I was going to be there. And so I show up to this ceremony. I did no research. All I knew that this was a major pattern disruption opportunity, and I was due for that. And so I did no research until like the week before the retreat. And when I looked up the retreat center, I looked up the ayahuasquero or shaman's background, which is crazy to think that I did no research. I realized that he was the guy in that documentary, which was nuts. Again, I don't think the algorithms were that good in 2019, but it all kind of, it felt like the universe conspired to get me there at that exact time.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but before I get to ask the next two questions, but John, I got to tell you, I want to just camp out here for a second, because I think something you said that really struck me hard is you called ayahuasca a catalyst, and I think that's exactly, in fact, and you talked about relitigate. I think you have the absolute perfect explanation for what this is, and it kind of frustrates me, because I think, and you also explained Western, how we take everything, and I call it analysis. We take everything, break into pieces, try to make it material so that we can, exchange it. And the thing is that we do that with medicine. So we take everything and make it a pill, and the pill. So here's what will cure you. Ayahuasca. This will cure you. And you nailed it. I've said to people, it's not what plant medicine or any of these things do. It's how you respond to it. And you responded by relitigating and challenging your beliefs and doing that. That's how this works in a healthy manner. If anybody's looking for ayahuasca or any of these things to fix them, they just sit back, they take it, and they're going to wake up the next morning fine. They're too far into Western medicine. So I love, like you explained it, a catalyst, relitigate. That's exactly it. So your advice to people is like, what is it going to take? Because it doesn't have to be ayahuasca. What is it going to take for you to challenge your beliefs and what you've been doing and open up that aperture to take in more information? Am I hearing you correctly?
That's right. I'm glad you brought that up, the medicine comment, because I think that the plant medicine nomenclature is not helping.
Right. In the West, especially, right?
Yes. And it has the potential to be any kind of medicine. It has the potential to cure cancer. There's stories of that. There's, stories of deep trauma and wounds, ancestral trauma, etc. But if you approach it like, I'm here to take my medicine, it's going to give you something different. It's going to try to break you down, because what it really is a path, and it's a relationship. And so and they refer to ayahuasca as a neutral medicine. So my first time in ceremony, I came out of that really powerful ceremony and told the facilitator, I was like, all of our world leaders should drink this medicine. And he's like, no. he's like ayahuasca can be very good at making you better at what you already are. So it's neutral. If you are a psychopath, it will train you to be a better psychopath. If that's your intention and you're treating it in that way, it'll give you exactly what you need. So yeah, I'm happy you called that out, because we have this, it's almost a projection where it's like, this thing needs to fix me, and that you have no responsibility in the matter. And so it's a catalyst to, really get to know yourself and really get to know all of your relationships. And, we'll probably get into this, but everything is in relationship. I'm in relationship to this Zoom meeting right now,
Right.
but it's serving as a mirror. But that's really how this medicine works, is a really intense mirror at times. And so and I've also worked with other medicines. One of the facilitators would say ayahuasca is ayahuasca question, and peyote is peyo tension, which is very it really aligns with the energies and qualities of these medicines. But I also sat with the Native American church in a peyote ceremony, and one of the things he said is, it's all your fault, because everything is in relation to you. So right. Everything is a mirror. And so in these experiences, you really get to see how you're entangled in all of these relationships. So
perfect.
Awesome, man. So John, I just want to say before John asks the question, is when we get into my model, like, all of these states of mind are already there. It's the medicine just kind of shuts some of them down so you can go into these deeper states. Like you said, it's nothing you're achieving. You're not like getting something new. That's why Chogyam Trungpa says that, because what you're looking for is just to understand all of these deep levels of mind, which are inside of you and divine and operate, very differently than what we're used to. So, thank you.
Nice. Okay, so my questions kind of they go a different direction here. So, John, I was wondering if you could tell me, when was the first time, usually it's before 10, 11, or 12 years old, when was the first time you felt different or disconnected from everyone?
What an interesting question. Well, I'm an only child, so I've had a lot of experience with myself. And so relating has always been challenging or confusing at times, because I didn't really have a model for, I didn't have a brother, so I didn't know what it was like to get beat up or to beat someone up. And I didn't have a sister, so I didn't know how to, relate with a feminine energy. And so I was pretty introverted for most of my life. My first experience of that was I was probably, it might have been kindergarten or preschool, where I was we were playing tag or something, and I was chasing this kid around a tree, and I did something like I might have tripped him or pushed him or something in some way that led to him smashing his face into the tree. And it wasn't intentional, but it was like we're playing around, and he turned around, like he started crying, and I thought he was laughing, and he turned around and his face was covered in blood. And that was the first time I saw blood.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this rattling moment where I was so confused. I was like, I thought we were playing. I thought he was laughing. I thought, it was going from having fun to like, this is crazy serious right now. And I don't know what's happening. And so that was an experience of where, like, I don't know what I did, and I don't know like how to play. That was like my takeaway was, I don't know. It was kind of paralyzing in that, like, I'm afraid to play with kids. I'm afraid of what I'm capable of, or I'm afraid of, getting in trouble. So I think that's my earliest memory of like, not not being conditioned to play.
Yeah, amazing answer. Wow. My second question is, can you remember a time again, like before 12, the first time you made other people feel uncomfortable by challenging the status quo?
Before the age of 12?
Yeah, you made others feel uncomfortable by challenging the status quo.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think I've always kind of been annoying in asking too many questions. It's hard to pinpoint an exact point in time, but yeah, with school, and I was kind of a latchkey kid. So uh, I was in after school care. My mom worked at a different school. So in a lot of ways, it was just kind of chaos, and it was, I felt like I was around a bunch of bad kids, and maybe I was a bad kid too, but uh, it was just like, it kind of felt unsafe. but there was like a rigidity to kind of after school care out of, a means to maintain control of things, um, that felt so militaristic, and you know and it was a very like forcing masculine kind of uh, container where like we just weren't having fun is what it came down to. So I think that's that was, like elementary school, middle school kind of thing, where it's like, why does this feel like the military, um, as a kid?
That's an amazing answer. It fits so much with what you said to Jason's first question about experience and being in the moment. It's like this is literally the opposite of that. So great answer.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a bit suffocating for sure. And school in general was hard.
Nice.
Awesome, man. So, what would be like your perfect day if you had everything, all the conditions right? You could be wherever you want to be. Kind of balance of maybe some work, some play, some social, some solo time. Paint that picture.
Yeah. So I've been pretty much nomadic for about 2 years. So about 2 years ago, my dog died, and I had a big house. It was too expensive, too big. Too. I had a really big backyard. That was the only reason I had, this house. And so, dog died, and I was like, I don't have a reason to be here anymore. And it kind of felt, it was hard because I had this dog for 13 years, but it felt liberating, because I could, I was working remote, and I had this opportunity to travel. And um, so to get to answering so most recently I bought a Airstream. So I've been traveling I spent this summer up in Montana in the mountains. I recently arrived in Florida. So that was a long drive by yourself. But,
What's an Airstream?
it's a camper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like those, looks like it's a nostalgic old, like,
Okay.
metal
Pop
Twinkie.
up one?
No, it's just like
Oh.
it looks like a Tic Tac.
Oh, wow.
Metal. Yeah.
Okay.
But before that, I traveled to probably almost 20 countries. And so what this kind of lifestyle has afforded me is to say yes to a lot of things. And so I have enough stuff to fit in my car. I've got a guitar and laptop and stuff, and I can work from anywhere. So this, and this, I recognize that this is a season. This isn't necessarily how I want to live forever, but I'm in this mode of being able to say yes and go to events. I'm flying to Costa Rica next month, and in Guatemala. And so I'm in this mode of spontaneous kind of travel. And so the perfect day is really just saying yes to something novel, saying yes to something that is, a pattern disruptor, or is something that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So, but in this most recent summer, spending a lot of time in Montana, in the mountains, in the rivers, my perfect day is really a mix of hiking in the woods. I found that throughout my life, I've had these moments of really hard insomnia, and I've been able to crack that code, and it's pretty simple. I have to exercise my body as much as I exercise my mind.
Mhm.
It's that simple. And so, when I was training for an Ironman, that was kind of my full-time job. And my sleep was awful. And I had a Whoop strap. I was tracking everything. And it's because I was just kind of mindlessly training, and I wasn't training my brain. And we didn't really get into my my past life, if you will, but I used to have a Wall Street type job. And so sleep was really hard then too, because I would be using my mind. I'd be doing complex work, complex math, etc., statistics, and then I would just go home just completely wired. And so my ideal workday is right now is just waking up, hiking, running, swimming, or something, and then I'm just so energized to work throughout the day, and then I'm depleted at the end. So it's achieving that balance is super important.
It's awesome. That's like the wheel of bliss right there. And it's like you went from like working your brain, working your body, and now you're balancing the brain and the body, which is the balance of the elements. Yeah. Awesome. So so right now you're living this, blissful life, freedom and meaning. If you could make one wish to improve it, what would you do? What would you wish for yourself?
Yeah, I think it's finding ways of being in service is always something that I would say that is also another thing that can keep you up at night is um in this kind of materialist capitalist world, you can have a deficit in that service area. And so it's a crazy world out there, as we all know. And so I heard a quote like 2 days ago. It was something like, ask not how to change the world, but ask what gives you life and what gives you meaning. And so, really tapping into like, sometimes service is just being a good example or a good symbol for someone else. And so I think that, being in community is a really important thing, but is hard to do nomadic in the nomadic lifestyle. So yeah, I think I'm getting to a point where I want to be more slow-matic and kind of
Created a word. Look at that. Never heard that word before.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm in a good rhythm of spending time in summer in Montana was really nice, and then winter in Florida is a good combination. So I'm kind of leaning into and calling in kind of seasonal community, and just finding ways of showing up for people. That feels like an important part of my life.
Definitely.
So I've never do this. I already did it once with you. Now I'm going to do it twice with you, John. So before I ask my two questions, I want to learn a little more about what you said. So separate from all this, when I coach people and I help people, one of the questions I want to ask you, because I think you opened the door to this about service, which is great. What is the thing you most like to help others with? And I like to say, you want to help people with this so much that you would buy them a cup of coffee if they would let you help them with this. So what's like the thing you most like to help others with?
Yeah. Well, I think that one way to change the world is to wake as many people up as possible, whatever that means. And so I think that people can also be a catalyst. So, um, if, and kind of using the quantum logic of having an ayahuasca experience, well, all of a sudden, that's in the field and that's a topic of conversation in all of my relationships. I take it down a notch these days, but when I first had that experience, that was in the zeitgeist of all of my relationships.
Okay.
And so, and that has a quantum ripple effect, not like, quantum field, but it has a parabolic math to it. If I tell one person about that, they're going to hear that word and either do research or it's going to come up in conversation with 10 other people. And that ripple effect, it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is going to have their own experience, but it's the ripple effect in the collective consciousness. So yeah, I think that I've had several people tell me that a conversation that they've had with me changed the course of their life, and it's not about me. It's because there's so many people that have done that for me. So yeah, just being kind of a pattern disruptor, or a soft invitation to finding whatever catalyst you need in your life, to just kind of in some way break consensus reality.
Nice.
Because consensus reality is also always changing. It's impermanent. It's ever changing. It's it's like if you're playing billiards in the back of a pickup truck. Yeah, the physics of pool works when you're at a stoplight, but not when you're going around the turn.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think it's I think it's a bit of a cliche with the plant medicine world, but also true, where you feel a sense of responsibility to be the medicine, or to hold the medicine, and to kind of not go back to your old patterns. So yeah, I think just having the kids call based conversations.
Nice. Great answer. I'll get back to my two boring questions now compared to that. So, okay. So back when you were asking too many questions, and my status quo question is exactly what you just said about this, what was the term you used for like this consciousness that everybody's agreed to or whatever? How'd you say that?
Consensus reality.
Consensus reality. I like that. That's status quo. And it doesn't apply to anybody uniquely, because it's trying to apply to everybody. So back when you were asking all these questions about this militaristic after school program, what compelled you to ask those questions?
I think it's just a need need to understand. And I've also noticed that, like, I've taken a bunch of different paths in life to try to understand what it's like to be that person. Um, it feels like a karmic or life lesson kind of path, but to understand myself through understanding others. Um, and so I'm just really curious about how people arrive at their own consensus reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently at my parents' house, and let's just say they watch a lot of consensus reality programming. And so I'm having to kind of censor myself in asking them why they believe what they believe, but I know why they believe what they believe. Uh, because a big majority of their generation and society in general kind of goes to the trough to get talking points. And and it's like, how many people are walking around practicing their talking points that they didn't come up with?
99.9% of people. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I was kind of dealing with that at an early age, which is, a struggle I had in the corporate world, and, even in romantic relationships. It's like, this is the way that things work. And why? Because that's the conditioning that we were given. And, and so, yeah, like going to a job, and it's like, yeah, we do this way because this is the way it's always been done. And, you couldn't tell me anything worse. I have to poke holes in that and get to first principles thinking
Mm-hmm.
on how did we arrive here, and would we, like re-underwriting, like I said earlier, which a lot of people don't want to do that, and part of the Nickturn training was this wheel of samsara, which is Buddhist concept of these 6 different realms, but he would treat them like archetypes. And
Oh.
so there's a literal interpretation of these 6 different realms, and then there's a archetypal interpretation where it's, you are all of these things. You're not necessarily all of them all the time, but one of those realms is the animal realm, where you are like an animal grazing in a field, and you're completely happy as long as you have grass to eat and you're not getting killed, and eat, sleep, pee, poop, and you're a happy animal. And so in some ways it takes a lot of courage to re-underwrite your belief system, and especially when it's ever changing, and you see, like, these waves of centralization and decentralization of power. You see worldviews shifting from left to right. You see interpretations of things constantly changing, of like biblical texts constantly changing, schisms in belief systems. And so we kind of have a responsibility to re-underwrite our belief systems and to do some housekeeping. And, I think a majority of people probably don't have the capacity to do that. like the mental capacity. They don't have the time. They've got kids to take to school. They don't want to, you know, they don't want to think about how fractional banking works or whatever the topic of the day is. And I definitely appreciate that. But at some point, you know, to steal a David Nichtern joke, he's like, at some point, if you're a goldfish in a tank, at some point you're going to run into your own string of poop. Meaning, like, at some point, all of that unconscious behavior catches up.
I think, first of all, I gotta say this episode of 8 Questions has gone exactly the way Jason and I had always intended it to go. Okay. So thank you, John. This has been spectacular. Second, we definitely have to have you back on. Jason and I just taped an episode of Samsara, and I would love to talk more about, we just did an overview to help people understand it. You actually started getting into the implications and for people's lives and everything. And I would love to go through that, because I have a lot of thoughts, and I'd love to get your thoughts from your experience. But unfortunately, I'm going to just do my last question, and we'll see where we go here. But this has been great, John. Absolutely great. When you had the incident with playing with the kid and he hit his face and he's bleeding, okay, and you're sitting there going, I don't know how to play. Today, you looking at that kid, what would you today say that kid's mission in life was? Not just necessarily from that incident, but at that time in his life, what was his mission in life?
Yeah, it was a classic fuck around and find out. Which is the story of my life. Yeah, it's that gets to it kind of goes back to my salivagant nomadic lifestyle. And so another example would be a friend of mine, I was talking about buying this camper just because I wanted to experience that. And it was one of these things that was in the back of my mind that I was thinking about, almost fantasizing about what is this like, to where I realized that I was using so much horsepower thinking about that. Like, I need to go do the thing. And I talked to a friend who used to have a travel trailer, and he did it solo as well. And he's like, don't do it. He's like, it's so much work. He's like, you'll end up driving it more than you're staying in it. And, it's not a pretty lifestyle. I mean, you got to, what they call a stinky slinky. You have a septic hose that you got to, dump your poop into. You got to, sometimes you're staying in, going from city to city, you're staying in a rough RV park, or, meet some characters. And I'm like, but he was, coming up with this list of all the reasons not to do that. And he was just further enforcing that, like, I want to do this. And it was more, there's a little bit of defiance in there, if I'm being honest, but also, I'm experiencing what life is like in the slow lane, and, driving an RV, and, people honking at me and tuning my nervous system to not care about how slow I'm going, and, which is its own spiritual path. But it was like, and I know what it's like to be a trucker and to pee in a bottle sometimes. There's nothing sexy about it. But it was another thing of, like, someone can tell me how to in this case, play tag, how would you instruct someone how to play tag? and like, especially a 5-year-old, on the dynamics of play and how to notice when it's going too far, and like, you just have to learn through experience. And I didn't have an incremental way of learning that. I had a very abrupt lesson learned. So yeah, it's just like, I have to, I'm an experiential learner in general, and you can tell me the way that things work, but if it doesn't quite satisfy me, like your explanation on why not to do something, or why things ought to work a certain way, then I have to fuck around and find out.
Yeah, the thing is, though, is that I have experienced way too many people who say they're experiential learners, and it's just a rationalization for them to do whatever they want. And the first proof that I think they're just goofing around is you ask them about something they did 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and they're like, "Oh yeah, well that was just like that's an experience they had. It's on the shelf." And they don't learn anything from it, and they don't even think about it anymore. Whereas everything you have said during this entire meeting has been, you do things and then you get a lesson from it that you're going to apply. And
Right.
I think that makes you really different. I feel like a lot of my friends are going to look at this and go, "See, you like that, John Gordon. I could tell. Why do you have such a problem with me being an experiential learner?" I'm going to be like, "Did you listen to what he does with his experiences? He's actually learning from them. He's not just, he remembers meeting Jason before COVID and the impact it had. He remembered doing ayahuasca back there and the impact it's had. You can't even remember the impact from something you did 3 years ago," is what I'm going to end up saying to them. So I really appreciate what you're talking about, experiential learner, because I think you are an example of how you're really supposed to be learning from experience. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and to add to that, going back to the, experiential and kind of the doctrine, or the more masculine structuring of things, that's why, they say integration is so important for these plant medicine experiences, right? Or any kind of ecstatic state experience, which is where meditation really came in, which, like, meditation is the ultimate integration tool. And in a way, ayahuasca is teaching you how to meditate at like warp speed, but it's you know it's sending a bunch of simulations that you're really checking your attachments or your relationships to these different experiences. And so that's a really important kind of scaffolding around crazy experiences, or things that don't necessarily make sense. Like, I asked a shaman one time, what is the spiritual interpretation of this like synchronicity that I had? And he's like, your guess is as good as mine. Meaning no one has the context of my entire life to be able to interpret this experience better than I do. And so meditation is really double clicking on these experiences, these somatic experiences, these symbolic resonances of memories of, past traumas, etc. And it's the ability, the skilled meditator has the ability to kind of inquire about these things without re-traumatizing. That's kind of the goal, right? And that takes practice. But so yeah, that's to your point, where people can have these quote unquote learnings, but don't do much afterwards to integrate and kind of stitch these things together with meaning and integrated learnings, then yeah, there's work to do.
Right, but I mean, how do you have a lot of friends, or do you know a lot of people that approach experiential learning the way you do?
I have a lot of friends that I would say are more leaning on the fuck around side.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Uh, but that is the thing too, where it's like, someone that has really challenged consensus reality might be inclined to fuck around more, right?
Right, right, and you're letting your uniqueness out, and you're being truly yourself, and you're being in the moment. But it is this dance, and what I've really enjoyed about meeting you today is that you truly have, you call it the framework, the masculine framework. You truly value that as much as you do the feminine experience and expression, which I
Yep.
think is just so rare to meet someone like you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this has been great. Always feels good hanging out with both of these
It does.
guys.
It does. It feels so great to just, I feel chill. Like I said, I'd like to get into a more philosophical conversation about people trying to reach people in consensus reality. I think that would be like a whole title of a show. Like, let's talk about how we reach these people, because you have that passion and I definitely have that passion, and I've tried a lot of different things. So I would love to talk about that another time. Yeah.
I just want to ask one last question. With all your traveling and getting to meet all these unique people and being a great listener and very observant, what do you see? What do you see out there that maybe obviously is not in the consensus reality? It's not on the news. It could be something promising. Could be something scary. Like, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's these. I mean, the most obvious one to me that's a polarity, I would say, is um, the people leaning into plugging into AI and this Ready Player One timeline, and then you you spend a couple times in ceremony in different parts of the country or in the world, and there's also this growing like Middle Earth Lord of the Rings community of um, people living in collectives, in tribes, and kind of forging their own paths. And there's, I think we go through these cycles, and I can almost see it with your 3D model, Jason, which is like these cycles of centralization and decentralization. And so, AI is creating this kind of new reality of a bunch of people being able to start their own businesses and have, the capabilities of a whole workforce at their fingertips. And it's, lowering the barriers to entry to be your own business. But it's also, um, open AI is the backbone, is the infrastructure. And so, I think we're in a bit of an experiment, and I think there's also beautiful decentralized projects happening too. So I think the future looks like, these networks of communities, and out of necessity. And so, the people building the infrastructure to support that is a pretty promising future. But we got to stay diligent, and consensus reality is shifting at an exponential rate. So it's a good time to check in more frequently. What's going on?
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, look, we had Dr. Lou, we have an MD, doctor, researcher, we have a rabbi, we have John. Everybody, we're all saying the same thing. Like, we got to get these villages, the network of communities. Like that's so apparent. And again, it could be enhanced by AI and robots. We haven't even talked about robots. Everyone's talking about AI. The robots are coming out soon too. But
Yeah. So, like, to use the kind of the plant medicine analogy again, AI is a catalyst, right? So it's a neutral force. We can use AI for good or for bad. And it is downstream from us, and it's downstream from our consciousness. So our consciousness is the seed, and AI is this exponential tree that's growing. So we got to make sure we're working on, the most foundational layer of all of this stuff.
very well said. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Yeah, well, we'll see you
This was
soon.
fun. All right. Bye for now. Thank you.
Take care, brother.